Welcome to the Spa Girls podcast. Each week we bring you self-publishing tips, tools and resources for authors. I'm Cheryl Phipps.
I'm Wendy Vella.
And I'm Trudy J. Hello and
Hello.
Welcome to the spa and welcome to our lovely guest. We've got Lynn Raye Harris, and it's her first time here, and we are so excited because today we're going to be talking about series.
Yes.
I'm excited too. Thank you.
Okay, we'll just get straight into the bio and then Trudy can lead us off with our questions. So Lynn Raye Harris is a Southern girl, military wife, wannabe cat lady and horse lover. She's also the New York Times and USA Today best-selling author of the Hostile Operation Team series of military romances and 20 books about sexy billionaires for Harlequin. A former finalist for the Romance Writers of America's Golden Heart Award and the National Reader's Choice Award, Lynn lives in Alabama with her handsome former military husband, one fluffy princess of a cat, and a very spoiled American Saddlebred horse who enjoys bucking at random in order to keep Lynn on her toes. That's a great bio.
Yeah, we did a session on bios quite recently, and,
yes.
and I have to say yours is a very good example of a bio that we like.
Thank you. Well, it's not the first version, we like with anything, we edit and change and cut. And
as soon as we did that topic, I think we raced off.
We all raced off and tweaked it.
Well, I intended to, but I never did. So maybe I'll do that now.
On the list, right? It's on the list.
So Lynn, this week we're talking to you about series, which is really intriguing. You've got loads of series, loads of different books that we can use as examples. So, but first, what I really would love is your writer journey. How did you get into writing and self-publishing? Tell us all.
Everything. Well, it's like so many people, it's one of those long stories. I mean, I always wanted to write, and then at a certain point I decided to write romance because I'd been a romance reader. So I had read romances as a kid, specifically the Harlequin Presents line, and then I got away from it because I was told that they weren't serious and all that stupid stuff people tell you. So I got away. And then I came back to it in my mid-20s and decided that was my home. That's where I wanted to be. And this was the time, when traditional publishing was the thing. There was no such thing as self-publishing. And so you had to write a manuscript and, query editors and go through the whole thing, which I did. And it was very disappointing. I got a request for a full, and then a year later I got rejected. And I mean, it was just, oh my God, it was so awful. People who can just have never dealt with that and they just are able to press publish now. It's so awesome. It's so awesome. But anyway, fast forward a few years, and my husband's military, so we moved around the world, and I ended up in Alabama. And joined the local chapter, and you may recognize the name Linda Howard. Linda is one of the Linda is one of our members, and she was very encouraging, and the whole chapter was wonderfully encouraging. And so I started kind of going in a different direction, and somebody said to me, "Hey, Harlequin's having this contest for writers for the Harlequin Presents line," and she said, "I think you could write these because you've moved around the world and it's the international billionaires, and I think you could do it." And I'm like, well, maybe, so I entered the contest and I won. So
wow, congratulations.
Yeah. It was so awesome. It was the precursor to the So You Think You Can Write contest is what it was. It was the first one that they held, and it was just for presents. And there were like 600 entries. They had a blog back then, and they showed the room where all the editors were with this giant conference table and these stacks of stacks, and it was one chapter and a synopsis. That's all you had to enter, 1-page synopsis. And so they had stacks, and they were teasing with pictures. We're getting very close to calling the winner, and I got that call. And so I didn't win a publishing contract, but what I won was an editor for a year, which was extremely instructive. It was awesome. And 6 months later, I sold. That was in 2008. So self-publishing still wasn't really a big thing. And that was the beginning. And then in 2013, I self-published my first book because I had written a military romance before I sold to Harlequin. And I decided to self-publish that. And so that's what started me self-publishing. And I did both for a couple of years, and then realized that, the place where I really wanted to be and where the growth was in the indie world. And so I went full indie I think in 2015. And that's
Wow.
the story.
Great journey. I love hearing people's journeys. They're so different and diverse.
Yeah, they are, right?
They're really
It's
amazing.
so interesting.
Wow, that's awesome. So and so you write a lot of military romance. I don't know if do you write anything else? Is that your main?
That's the main thing. I
Yeah.
just kind of got into the military romantic suspense world, and I've stayed there. I have written in 3 other series with authors where, you have like 8 authors get together and do books. And so Barbara Freethy headlined those 3 series, and they were just they were like brothers that were connected. I think, were they all brothers? I think in every case they were brothers. So we had 7. That's what it was. It was 7 brothers for each series. And so those were not romantic suspense. They were just contemporary romance. So I wrote those. But these days I pretty much hang out in the military romantic suspense world. That's just what I like.
I was just going to say it must be useful having an ex-military husband to help you with that.
It is helpful. And I grew up in the life too. My dad was in the military. My mom was in the military reserve. And so I grew up around it. And so the terms, there's all these terms and lifestyle things that, I don't know how people who want to write it research all that, because I grew up with it. And it's like a language of its own, right? And so it just comes naturally to me. Not to say I don't get things wrong. I'm sure I still do. He's been out of the military for a while now, and we haven't been around that life, for a while, and they change things. They like to change things, but most of the essential stuff remains the same.
Yeah, of course.
All the stuff you need. So if we're going to talk about series, let's get a sense of what you've got. So how many series do you have? Let's talk your series in particular.
I have 4 series, and they're all set in the same world. And I had no grand plan when I started. It's kind of funny to say, but I had no grand plan. I'm in this world. I've created this hostile operations team, which my husband actually helped me come up with that. And it's great because it lends itself to all the titles. Hot, you get hot in all the titles. So anyways, the hot theme,
I didn't get that until you just said
it. Yep, hot. So
good keyword.
Absolutely, and it's wonderful. It works on so many levels. But I started writing the hot series, and I was going on for a while, and then I decided I need to break it. So I broke the series into 2, and then I'd started a couple of side series, but they're all in the same world, 4 series, and I'm going to start a 5th next year.
Wow.
In the
How
same
many
world.
books in each series do you go for a set amount, or do you just go for as long as you think it needs?
Yeah, that's kind of what I did, because again, I'm not a master planner here. I kind of wish I was. I know we all know the Becca Syme language, and I am a number 5 futuristic. So you would think I would be really good at the planning, but I'm not. I think way out there. But no, the first series has 12 books, and I was about book 16 or 17 when I thought, I could break this. And so I broke it into a second series, and now I think I've written 7 in the second series. And I'm about to write the 8th, which will be the end. I've decided 8 is plenty, because that's a typical, military team. 8 to 9, you could get away with 6, and I probably will do 6 on the next one, actually. And then the other series I did is a group of mercenaries, and they're at 7, and there are a couple other characters I could write about, so I may end up at 9. And then I had a hot SEAL team series, and there are 9 of them, but I've only written 8, and the 9th, he is in my newsletter every week, almost every week, because he doesn't have his book yet. He's complaining, and he's always, currently he resides in my guest room. It's a whole thing with my readers. They love it. He resides in my guest room, and he does things with glitter, and he tried to make his own cover. And I mean, it's just the silliest thing, but they love it,
Oh my God. Sounds fantastic, actually.
That sounds awesome. Yeah. And let's talk about that in a minute in terms of marketing for series, because
I reckon
brilliant idea in terms of that. But
can I ask a question?
Go.
I'd really like to know, when you talk about breaking a series, how does that come about? How do you make that happen in such a way that it's not going to just be disjointed? Or or in fact to be completely separate, in a
Right.
growing way.
I think it works well with like a military team because there's an obvious team. So I had my strike team one, which I had to rename them too because I had Alpha Squad, and I think the next one they were Echo Squad. And then when I realized I was breaking it and I wanted to put that in the subtitle, I'm like, well, Amazon doesn't like the word alpha, right?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, things get hidden. There are people who can't advertise their books because of alpha. So I'm like, all right, well, yeah, it's a thing. So I'm like, I can't use alpha. So I came up with Strike Team 1, Strike Team 2. I could go on. I could have as many strike teams as I want. But anyway, I'd already written about the core group in the 12. One guy has 2 books actually. So the last book is about the commander, and then there's a novella that comes right after his book that kind of tied up some things in his life because he's older, he's like 50. So it tied up some stuff. So that was the 12. And then where I broke it was it was a new team. They're still working in the same building. They still have the same commander. So it could have kept going. But I'm like, well, gosh, I've got this second team. It's just logical to give myself another series and another entry point into my world. So that's how I did it. And because I'd already named, I had the titles with the hot in them. The way that we branded them to separate them is my cover designer redid the covers of the Strike Team 1, and they all have a very light background. Strike Team 2 has a dark background. So they're still hot this, hot this, hot this, but visually you can see that they're 2 different series.
Yeah.
That's cool. That's
great.
In my mind I was like, how do you go about that? So thank you for that.
Yeah.
Well, let's quickly talk about covers, because that's an interesting point. So you've your designer has made them look really clearly the same, like with the hot. So that's why is that important? Why should we trying to make the branding all look the same on a series, and that slight differentiation that you've made? Why is that important? Let's talk about that.
I think it's important that readers know what they're getting, right? We're always told that your covers, your blurbs, your branding, you should signal genre. And so my covers signal genre. That's the second iteration of those covers, I believe. So the first iteration also signaled genre, but they were all at that point 14, 15 books. They all had the same cover treatment. And then when we wanted to break them, that's why she decided a light cover and a dark cover would work. But it's still the same branding. It's still that big hot word. And it wasn't so big before. It was like in a banner, it was kind of a small hot and then the second word in a banner. And then when she broke it, she made the hot very big in each. And then I'm not a designer, I don't know what to call it, but she has this like background inside the word, so there may be some airplanes or helicopters or whatever. So it clearly signals genre. And I think that's important. The fact that the guys mostly, it's mostly man chest with faces mostly and dog tags. I mean, that kind of indicates a certain level of steam. If they were all clothed, it would be different. I hope anyway, that's what I hope, is that readers don't pick it up expecting, a closed door read kind of thing.
Yeah, no, that's cool. And I really like, so now that I know that it's Hostile Operations Team, it's even better. I didn't realize that that's what hot. And the fact that it's hot something in the titles is actually, and you can tell that it's part of that straight away by that one word always being in the part of the title. Are there some of the titles that have worked better, you think, than others, or have it's all equally because people get into the series and just read through? Like, is that?
I feel like it works more because people get into the series. They get invested in the world in the series. I don't know that any one title, because they're just 2-word titles until you get to the SEAL team, and then we have to have SEAL in there. They're 3-word titles. But I didn't always do everything perfectly, or, with the benefit of 10 years of experience as an indie now and looking back, I'm like, well, I could have done things a little better, a little differently, maybe signaled tropes better. I was doing cutesy word things like Hot Pursuit's obvious. That was book 1 and Strike Team 1. And then Hot Mess was fun because who doesn't want to read about a hot mess, And I just kind of, what can go with hot, And so that's how I picked them. I don't think any one particular one has done better than the others. I think it comes down to mostly blurb and trope, which I can see, in the numbers when I look. I can see, like, say, maybe book six didn't do as well as book 5 or book 7. And I think a lot of that was, it wasn't the title so much as my blurb and the cover at the time, which I fully believe in fixing all those things. And I am fixing them. The cover has been fixed, but I'm working on new blurbs because, you see all the.
Sorry for interrupting you. Can all your books be read as standalone, or do they need to be read through?
They can all be read as standalone. They're always all about one couple.
Right.
I have on my website, we have a PDF that we update that my assistant keeps. It is color-coded by series, but it is in order that I wrote them, because this was another thing I did that wasn't the most brilliant in the world. Or maybe it was. I jumped around. Like, say I'd write 5 books in the Strike Team 1 series, and then I decided I wanted to write some hot seals. And so I jumped over there and wrote about hot seals. So in order to get my readers to know it was the same world, I kind of put some characters, cross-populated maybe. So there are some characters that have appeared in all 4 series, in fact.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was just one of the things I did that I wasn't sure if it was a mistake, but it seemed to work.
Yeah. Find it quite hard to do that? Like, do you find it hard to kind of remember who's been where, and are there things that you have to remember when you get onto the next book in the series? Or
it is harder now, and I do have someone who maintains a series Bible, which helps a lot. Back in the early days, it was just me going, oh, I'm going to go right over here. I'll write over here. That character would be great over in this series. And so I would do stuff like that. And I did have sort of a running timeline in my head, because they were all sort of taking place sometimes concurrently, even though I didn't have events from, 2 books in 2 separate series. I didn't have them necessarily occur together, but like, say, this team was happening at the same time as that team was happening. And I tried to be very careful with that, because that's very hard to do if you're going to definitely mesh the timeline. It's hard. But yeah, it was a lot easier to do earlier on than it is now.
Yeah.
And I think that's why we have the PDF, and readers love that, because some want to read the series and some want to read in the order they were written, because I
found this on the web.
Yeah. What was that? Oh, it's Trudy. Trudy, something's happened. Something's come in there.
All right.
Carry on. What were you saying?
Oh, I think that was it. It was about, trying to, remember things from the series. Yeah.
So are you a plotter?
Oh, no. No, it would be nice if I were. I am.
Pences always say that, though, right?
I know. And I've tried.
Me too.
And until Becca came along, and Becca Syme, I know so many of your listeners probably know exactly who that is, and the strengths language and everything. Until Becca came along and I started reading her books and working with her a few years ago, I thought, I was broken. I wasn't doing it right. I could be so much faster if I would just plot out books, like we all think. We think I could just, if I could plot all these books, then I could just boom, 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 write them. And that's just not how I work. I'm a number 2 in election. I have to think. And I often need to think in the moment, not, plot it all out. Now, that said, I will keep like a running document of bullet points that I could use. And so I'll be thinking about those. And some of them I'd never use, but I always have an idea where it's going, but I don't plot them. No.
Oh, I wish we could plot. I'm the same.
Yeah,
I've tried so many times to plot. Man, I would love to.
So that does that not make it difficult for a series like that? How interconnected is it? Or is it like, I guess it's 2 different couples each time, or a different.
They're standalone books, though, that can be really standalone, but part of a series.
Is there an overarching kind of plot that goes like, like a evil?
Is there any thread that goes through all the books?
Right. I did that early on with the Strike Team 1. I had like a terrorist group that kept, coming in and out of the books. And they even appeared some in the Hot Seal Team, because that was the second series I started. And then that was getting too difficult to really keep up with. And I don't necessarily think that's what the readers wanted anyway. I think it was me complicating things. I mean, it was fun, but when I decided to just write a completely contained story where there's not this huge overarching arc. It's just the character arc within the story. And then bringing in, other characters. Like they always want to see the past couples, right? So I always have to have there's always like a barbecue scene where they're all at somebody's house at a barbecue or something. And they like that way more, I think, than they liked some, idea of the terrorist in book 1 getting theirs in book 8, That's what I do now.
Yeah. They do love it. They love to reconnect with couples. I've found that
they do.
Small town, they'll go, oh, I love that so-and-so came in, I thought, wow.
They love
it. Cool. Yeah, very cool.
So is there anything else that you do? So you've got this interconnected world. Is there anything else you do to keep them the same? Like, are they all the same heat level, at the same tone, like the actual writing of it? How do you keep it the same across all, or do you think there's a room for having different heat levels, or how do you think that what needs to work?
I think because mine is a single world, I think the heat level needs to stay about the same. I think it could be done if somebody, like, say you're writing, small towns, or I just said that because you just said that too, small town, but small town or something, even romantic comedy, you could vary the heat level, I think, but not too much. I don't think you could write closed door and then open the door, or vice versa, per series, because I think your readers expect a certain thing. Like when I first started my series, I'd been trained by Harlequin, right? So I had more of that Harlequin euphemistic language, his hardness and, things like that. And as I went on, I'm like, no, people want you to say what those things are. The language has gotten, exactly. The language has gotten a bit more colorful in that sense as far as the pieces parts, but nobody complains. So they might have been a little more euphemistic in the beginning. They are not now. And I think that kind of thing's doable because they're still hot,
Do you ever go back and tweak any of the earlier books?
I don't really. I've been on this master plan lately to tweak the tropes and blurbs. Like another one we've all heard of course, is Theodora Taylor and her universal fantasy. And so I'm going back. I was like, okay, I need to go back and do a better job of picking out what my tropes were, finding the butter, right? And then getting it into the blurb. So I've been on this big rewrite of blurbs. And with the one character, the guy who hangs out in my guest room and plays with glitter and wants his own book, I did go back and just put a sentence or two in that particular series to insert him earlier. That's the only thing I've ever really done.
Yeah.
Brilliant. That's a good opportunity. Let's talk a little bit about your newsletter and this guy that you're.
Yeah, I want to know more about that.
And have you done that with previous characters? Is this a new thing? How does that work?
How did it come about?
It's new. It came about because the world shut down. The world shut down in February of 2020. And I had a book. I was working on a book. I had a pre-order. Because I wrote for Harlequin for so long, I'm pretty good at deadlines. I'm not worried about them. I'm worried in the moment, but I'm not. I have a habit of making deadlines. So anyway, I will put up a pre-order and have nothing written, right? And so I had done that, and then the world fell apart. And so I had this book I had to finish. But instead of starting another book, instead of working on other books and putting out other pre-orders, I'm like everybody else. I mean, you're in your house, you're stuck, you're glued to the news. You don't know what's going to happen. Are we ever going to see each other again? Are we all going to die? The whole thing, right? Yeah. Your mind goes in a million directions. Yeah. Some people can write through adversity. I'm not real good at it, but I started writing to my readers every week. Before then, I'd only had a, here's a new release, kind of newsletter. And then I thought, well, we're all stuck at home. I just want to talk to them. So I would just send newsletters like, hey, I'm watching British murder mysteries on streaming. What are your favorites or whatever? And I would just talk about different stuff just once a week on Friday. And I started getting more, more specific and more detailed. And I couldn't really write a book, but I could write scenes. And so I don't even know how it came to me, but I had 3 characters at the time from series that didn't have their own book yet. And so I had the 3 of them, and I started this whole thing where they were like spying on me, waiting for me to start their book. Like, I mean, they're special operators, so they're hanging out in the tree behind my house, and it
That's
grew
brilliant.
bigger. Then I had where I was away from home, and like the whole team got together, and one of them brought an elephant, and they had a party in my backyard. I mean, it's this whole just crazy thing, but my readers loved it, so it kept getting bigger and crazier, and so anyway, the other two guys eventually got books, and so we just have the one left. And poor sad seal, he doesn't have his book yet, and so he moved into my guest room, and he house sits for me, and he does play with glitter. He's made his own cover, because he thought if he made a cover, it would inspire me. I mean, it's just silly stuff, and we share the cover in the newsletter. I have a very talented assistant who did that for me. She made the cover and put it in, and yeah, it's just funny stuff. But he still appears regularly. He's not there every week because neither one of us have, neither I nor my assistant have the the bandwidth to do it every week anymore, because she helps with it. But yeah, he's still there
from his perspective, like as if he's stolen.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Right. And he has a column now, and he will recommend books. Like, he recommends books from my backlist, which is very helpful, and he'll say things like, well, I don't have my book yet, but here's a story about this guy. And he just,
that is brilliant.
So great. So how often are you putting a newsletter out now? If it's not going once a week?
It's still weekly.
Oh,
we still do it weekly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
He's not necessarily in it every week,
Right.
but my assistant and I have worked on a metric for it, where we have rotating this feature, and we're constantly tweaking. But I have enough material to have a newsletter every week. I always have a reader letter, and then I'm in some swaps, and so we'll do like, here's some free books from my friends, and then we may have a backlist book. There are there's one funny feature that my assistant does. It's called incorrect quotes. And so she features the characters, and she'll have them say things that, weren't in the book, but they're funny, incorrect things. Like, the one guy says to the other, I read your dating profile. It says you're really good at, you're very creative. What is it you create? And the other guy says problems. So it's silly stuff. And she creates that stuff. She's brilliant. But yeah, so we have incorrect quotes. There's stuff every week, and readers seem to love it. They seem to love it.
How big's your newsletter?
It's pretty big now. It's like about 40,000.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That is big.
Yeah.
So you must get a lot of replies.
Yeah, I do, actually. And I had to enlist help to answer it. And I tell them, I have to write, so I can't answer everything. But please, feel free to write in and ask questions and all, and I will answer as I can. And I will also have people answering, for me. They don't answer as me. We never do that. But like my husband works for me, so sometimes he gets in there and answers them. And since he's in my reader group and they know him, they expect, they know who he is. So
as a reader, I'd think that was cool. Like getting I get you, I get your husband. Like that's kind of fun.
Yeah. He's Mr. Harris. I call him Mr. Harris in the group, and so he'll write him back, and as Mr. Harris, and which of course is his name, but he signs him Lynn's worst half and stuff like that. It's just it's just cute.
Cool.
Yeah.
That is awesome. That sounds amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let's go back to the books and the series stuff, because I'm kind of curious about it a little bit more. So, and I'm really curious about the interconnection. Do you wish that it wasn't interconnected, or you think that's the best way to go, like having everything in the same world? What's the benefits?
For me, it is a benefit, because I think that's just how the world works, right?
Yeah.
Especially with the military. Like, we live in Huntsville, Alabama, which is a town where, we have NASA, we have a lot of stuff, but we were stationed in Germany, and you can run into people you were stationed with in Germany in Huntsville, Alabama. So,
yeah. Oh, wow.
And my husband, actually one of my husband's friends, they were stationed together in Germany 20 years ago. And now we live here, and they get together regularly for lunch and stuff, because why not? Right. So life life is interconnected. So I guess for me, that's why series work interconnected, because I don't have to tie them together in the sense that they always have to run into each other, or you always need a character for one series dropping in on the other series. But say they have the same commanding officer, so that's one way to tie them together. That's one way that works. I think for me, if I had to come up with a series that was completely unconnected, like I didn't even mention hot, I think I would probably have a panic attack because I just wouldn't know how to do it, because in my mind, they're out there, even if I'm writing about some guys who aren't part of it, they're out there,
Yeah.
So.
That's cool. I mean, and that's probably adds to it, I imagine. As a reader, you would kind of like the fact that everything's interconnected. And
Oh, they love being in the same world.
Yeah.
Readers love being in the same world.
Yeah, I think they do. And so I have my mercenaries who are not in the military. Some of them are former military, but the leader of that group was in some of my military books, involved in some operations, and they thought he was the bad guy at first. And as the series went on, you found out he wasn't as bad as you thought, though still quite a rogue. And then he gets his own series with his own people, but there's still some cross connecting, like he calls up the commander of the hot team or the hot organization. And so it just works. It's just how my mind works.
Yeah. Awesome.
Well, it sounds like it's working well for you.
Your mind clearly works awesome.
Yeah, I reckon.
Well, thank you. It's not always, but
Yeah. Well, awesome enough for this content.
Yeah.
So we talked about how you'd broken up the series, and that you've got sort of between what did we say about between sort of 6 to 12 books in the different series.
Yeah.
Is there an ideal length, do you think? And is there because one thing that I'm always curious about with series is kind of usually you kind of come in on the first book, and then you kind of maybe sometimes have other books that you can kind of come in on that make sense. Do you have that kind of thing, like where you've got another entry point into the series, or is that why you broke them up when you broke them up?
Yeah, that was why I broke them up, because so many people want to start at the beginning. I mean, even though the books can be read as a standalone, like, you could say, oh, well, here's a forced proximity, enemies to lovers, small town, whatever. I want to read this one, and it's book 8 or something. I'm making it up, but it's book 8. They could do it, but they won't, and I don't read that way either. I want to start at the beginning. I think we're just wired that way. So I thought, well, the series is getting bigger and bigger, and it made sense to have more entry points, which is why I broke it, and why I started thinking making more companion series made more sense. So even though I've gone up to 12 books, I will try to keep it between 6 and 8 in future, because I think that gives you more entry points faster.
Yeah.
And so long as you set that world up in book 1, and then give them the idea that these books do cross, you can go read about these other people, then I think it's like Becca Syme talks about the vertical business, building a vertical business now, instead of always trying to go out horizontally. We're trying to build these vertical, getting people into our back alleyway, where they're like going through the maze and trying to, get through to the other side. So I think of it like a maze. If they get into the alley, they're going through the maze.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
I think some readers too with series, they tend to wait till the whole series is out and then they'll start reading them. I've had a few readers like that, and if you've got 12 books, they're like, oh, that's a lot of books, whereas 8, that's a great number, right?
Right.
Yeah. Do you think it's genre specific? Like, are there some genres this wouldn't work for, or is this just a romance thing? Like, do you have an opinion?
I kind of think it's a romance thing. I have to say that when I wrote for Harlequin, they wouldn't let me do that. It was 2 books they called it a duet. So like you could write about 2 brothers, and brother 1 has a book and then brother 2 has a book. If you've been there for a very long time, some of the, like say Lynn Graham or somebody like that, you could probably write 6 books about a family. Sandra Martin, she was one who would write 6. She would have 6 brothers, and they would let her do that. But newer authors, they weren't going to let us do that. And so 2 books was it. And I think I was just kind of hankering for that whole series idea, that I could write as many books about a connected group of people as I wanted. So I think it could work in any any subgenre of romance, because I think readers want, they want to get in, they want that world, they want, not to say that, the standalones don't work. I mean, I think Lucy Score does amazing with standalones. There are people who do. But I think so many readers want that shared world thing, even if it's just 3 books. I think trilogies are very popular in contemporary romance. But yeah, I think it just depends on what kind of world you set up. Is it a town where you've got all these people? Is it, do you have your 3 billionaire brothers? What is it, kind of thing?
Yeah.
I
And I think as readers, we like going back to that same
we do.
world. Like we feel comfortable there. We know what to expect. We know that we like the writing of the, we like the way the books are written. We like the characters. We don't. I'm very much like that. Once I find an author and a series that I love, I just want to be there all the time. I'm hanging on.
Exactly.
Like you've lost a friend when it finishes, and you're like,
yeah.
Even when you get a book in a series that isn't quite, in your opinion, as good as some of the other books, you love the world so much that you will give them another chance with the next book, I think, because you feel like you owe it.
Exactly. You're willing to, give it another try. Maybe you didn't like that book, you didn't like that trope or whatever. Somebody who's writing long series, and I'm just there for it. It's the Ruby Dixon, those Ice Planet Barbarian books. I'm like, okay, here's the next one, and I don't know how many. I think she's up to 21 or 22, and I'm there for it, whatever.
And she's done amazing with TikTok, hasn't she?
Yeah.
She's the one who went crazy on TikTok.
Went crazy on TikTok, yeah.
Do you?
But they're good books.
Yeah. Do you, with marketing, or what sort of, are you Facebook and Amazon, or how do you do your marketing?
Yeah, it's Facebook and Amazon. I have TikTok. I have more than one account because I am a #1 learner. So, I go off and I learn all the ways that we do the things. And, I know you have Brighton Walsh on talking, because I listened, of course. Brighton was talking about the passion accounts. Like, we had passion pages on Facebook for a long time. Having that account where you only follow the material you want to see, in your genre, and then start posting there. So I have all that. I just haven't done it because TikTok, I'm afraid I'm going to do it wrong. That's the other thing. I'm afraid I'm going to do it wrong. And then I have to start a new account, right?
Yeah.
Like, oh my gosh. But yeah, Facebook ads, I feel like I know what I'm doing on Facebook ads. I've taken classes, Sky Warren's class and Mark Dawson and other stuff. So I feel like I've got that one down. And AMS, I finally figured out the attribution, how to use attribution, which is pretty neat. So I'm doing that. But those 2 are the ones I do the most. Although I am a completely wide author, though I am getting ready to put one series into KU to Test the Waters. But I don't spend a ton on ads. I know some people spend hundreds of dollars a day, and I may spend 20 to 50, maybe. I just don't spend a ton. If I'm spending it all, sometimes I turn them off.
Yeah.
So what other marketing do you do? So we know you've got this awesome newsletter, which sounds amazing, and I'm going to go away and sign up to it after this interview. But what other marketing?
I've done some swaps, like, what they call them, calendar clubs, where you're like, you share someone's book this month, someone else shares yours, and then some, it's I think I'm in 3 of those this year, and an audiobook one. So there's 4. And those are very, very helpful. I think in military romance, though, I think a lot of the authors I'm swapping with, we already share a lot of the same audience, but that's all right, because you'll pick up some new people, and and maybe somebody who got your freebie but never read it, maybe they'll be spurred to read it because they keep seeing you show up, and other authors, So I do the swaps, and good grief, what else do I do?
Do you have translations? Do you do translations?
I'm working. I have 7 in German, not published yet, and I have 5 French, not published yet, because again, #1 learner has to get it all right. So I'm about to pull the trigger on German, though. I've been formatting them. The website is in progress. My cover designer is German, and so she's also my web person. So she's making the German site.
Handy.
And
That's so handy.
Yeah, it's very handy, super handy. And we've been together. My gosh, I've been with her. She built my first website when I sold in 2008. So I've been with her that long. She actually did covers for Harlequin and different, e-publishers back in the day, Alora's Cave and stuff like that. And so it's just a super advantage that she's German now when I want to do German, right?
And so
Yeah.
do all your books go into audio straight away? Do you release at the same time with audio, or how does that work?
Well, remember, pantser.
Yeah.
So no,
Same as me.
I have done some almost simultaneous, like say the paperback and the ebook come out on Tuesday, and then the audio might go live 2 days later, which for me is super awesome. That usually doesn't happen, but I've done it a couple times, and if you can do it, it is amazing to do it that way. But I'm not somebody who works ahead. I wish I was. So the audio tends to come out if I've booked it, because I have a production company, and if I book it in time, I can get it within a month or two of when the book comes out, which is nice. People are still looking for it. In fact, I had a book in May, and I have one in February. Okay, the February one is being recorded now, which is a little late, but it's just the way it is. And then the May one should be recorded and out in August. So that one's not too far behind.
Are you a male or a female, or a male or a female? What sort of narrators do you use?
Both. When I started, I was just using male because that seemed to be what was working in military romantic suspense. And then I took a break for a while because I felt like audio, we put so much money into it, right? And it could take a while to earn out. I mean, some books earn out within I've heard people say they can earn them out in a month. I've never done that. Maybe 3 or 4 months, but usually it takes me a year or better.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's the way it is. And so because of the crappy terms and, everything that was going on, I'm like, well, I'm just going to put a halt to audio.
Yeah.
And then when the pandemic happened and I was looking at things, I thought, I'm going to try it again, because this whole thing is a long game, right?
Yeah.
And so I spent a lot of money catching up, and I used a production company because I was going through ACX, and I had a guy who I loved. He was really great, but he was finding the producer, the people who cut the audio and all that. He was finding it, and there was a backlog. It was taking time. So I went with a production company that has all the people. They get my manuscript, and they're like, we will give you back your mastered files in 3 weeks or a month or whatever, and you don't have to do anything except upload them. And that's all. I don't even listen to them because they're professional, and I know, and I have an audio ARC team. So if anything's wrong, and there's only ever been a thing wrong once, and they fixed it immediately. But the point being, I did go back and I invested the money, a significant amount of money, to catch it all up. However, I can say I am in the black. I am in the black on audio.
That's brilliant.
Yeah. I started putting them all out, and yes, some books have not earned out yet, but overall, I am now in the black and ahead. And so at this point, I'm just doing audio on the books that I write a book, I'll get the audio for it. I don't have a big backlist to catch up anymore. And it is true, the more of them you have, the better you do. And I also have taken some over to Findaway, off exclusive, over to Findaway, get chirp deals. Chirp deals are amazing. And all of that has helped. It's like the snowball, right? The more it goes.
Absolutely. The more you have.
Yeah, the better.
Exactly. It is a significant outlay, but
it is a significant outlay. And it depends. I realize people have options now. We have the AI voices. I personally wouldn't use them. That's me. I don't feel they can emote. They're not going to emote the way I would want my characters, my dialogue and stuff. So I don't use them. I don't think anyone who does use them is in the wrong. I mean, we all have to make our own business decisions. I personally am all for the voice actors, and I just think it's a better product, but it is a significant outlay.
Yeah.
For sure.
Agree. Yeah.
And so, and do you think series having a longer, the same kind of length series that you've got in audio, that works as well? People are in this. Is it the same as when people are reading? They want to read the next book in the series.
Yeah, I think so. I've gotten pretty good at seeding in characters. Like, say, the next book is gonna be about this guy. I've gotten good at seeding him in, which I didn't always do that well. Maybe because I was only allowed to write 2 books, 2 connected books for Harlequin. I don't know. It just, or maybe I'm just dense. I don't know, but it took me a while to figure out, seed that guy in. And so now I do that. And I think listeners appreciate that, and they just pick up the next book. Just keep listening.
Whether it's audio or whatever. I can't wait to hear how you get all your translations up. That's a big I'm looking forward to that. Yeah. So you any other marketing that you do, is it always first in your series, or do you market the other books in the series? Do you do newsletter, do you get BookBubs or e-reader, ENT deals, anything like that? Do you do that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I'm always applying for BookBubs, and in fact, I have one today.
Nice.
So this is a first in series box set. So I took each book from the 4 series and put them together with a really awesome cover. It's called Hot Heroes. It has a really patriotic American cover. And so it's perfect for summer because, we have our patriotic holidays in the summer. And so that, I haven't even looked at the numbers. I don't know what it's doing, but I set that one to free. And it has run before with a Christmas cover. So we ran it at Christmas. Yep. Had a different cover, had like little, Christmas ornaments and stuff. And I'll be honest, I can't remember if it was this Christmas or the Christmas before because time runs together, right?
Yeah.
Might have been this past Christmas. Anyway, it did really well. And so I applied again and I told them, look, this one, I ran this before, it did really good. And now I have this patriotic cover that's great for summer. And they took it. So that's running. But that is just a first and free series box set, which, they're getting all 4 instead of just 1. But I do run other books. I cycle through. I mean, at one time, the wisdom was, you don't run your book 8 or book 9 or whatever, because it's later in the series. But to me, as long as it's older, I will apply.
Yes.
I will try to get a BookBub because I think I must have about 40 indie books at this point, I think it is. And so why not use them?
Absolutely.
I do not put a book that I wrote this year on sale, or even within a year. I know some people are like, well, a month has gone by, it's a backlist, and that's fine. It's whatever works for you. But I like to keep the full price, for at least a year. But I will apply for BookBubs. I've had multiple BookBubs on some, and then others I apply and I get rejected. I'm like, this book would be great, but they won't take it, that kind of thing. But aside from BookBub, we do paid advertising, my assistant has a whole round robin of places she applies for the first free in series. And so they go, she keeps a spreadsheet and I can just look at it and see what's upcoming. So those are she constantly applies for ad space for those. And then I am getting ready to move a series into KU, like I said, and the first is free in series, and I'm about to pull them all down and just see what happens. I'm just going to give it a try.
That's the beauty of it, right? You can test.
Yeah.
That's the good thing about being indie.
Yeah.
So your first in series are all currently free? They're perma free? Is that
one is not actually? I have my Mercenaries. I did do a free run on it, but then I put it back to paid, and so that series has no first free. They're all full price, and that's an experiment too, right? And they get plenty of, because they're all tied to the, it's tied to the other series.
Yeah.
And it's a character who appears frequently in books from the other series, the leader of that group of mercenaries. And so I find that my my sales on that, they're actually pretty good. People will go buy the first and then they'll work their way through. So I haven't lost anything by not having a free book there. I think about it from time to time, but
do you change it up in the back of the end of your series, what you're going to push them towards next, as in another series, another book?
Do you mean the back matter?
Mm.
Yeah.
Yes. I don't do it as often as maybe I wish I did, but I tend to push them to the next book, right? So I'll be like, if I've mentioned the character, that's really great. Sometimes I went back and I wrote little bonus scenes where I specifically went into that character's point of view, who, the hero who's going to be the next hero, and I put them in. And then after I get, past his little viewpoint, or he's been mentioned enough, or they mention him and, he's coming, and I'll the first line after, well, I don't write the end because, you don't want Amazon to pop that little thing up. Scene break. Thanks for reading, Hot Pursuit. If you want to find out what happens when, Sam knocks on Georgie's door or whatever, one click here. And so I send them to the next book. I always send them to the next book. But at the end of a series, I may send them, have you read the free book in my other series? I'll send them over there. Things like that. I don't change back matter too often. And I know some people will change, like if they're having a book bub, they will change the back matter to point to the newest book. And I just haven't found the energy to do that.
There's so many things, right?
It's a big thing.
So many things to do.
So many things.
So many.
All the things.
All the things, all the time. Lists and lists.
Yeah.
So we
never ending.
Do you send them to your newsletter in the back matter? Is there anything else, or is it mainly just you want them to go to the next
Yes.
book?
I do want them to go to the next book. That's the first thing. I think I want to sell them a book more than I want them on the newsletter. But when you open the book, you know how it just defaults to chapter 1, right? Well, I format all my stuff in Vellum. And so if you have an introduction, it will default to the introduction. So I have an introduction, and then I rename it Get Free Bonus Content. And so it says Get Free Bonus Content, and the book opens there. And then I just tell them, if they sign up for my newsletter, I have like a bonus page that they can go to and get like bonus epilogues. And there's some other goodies like a character dossier and stuff like that. I think we even have a craft pattern, but so anyway, I tell them that, and then I tell them, which is, sign up for the newsletter, and then about this book, that they launch into the book. And then at the end, after I've said, go see what happens when, she slams the door in his face or whatever, one click here. And then under that, sign up for my newsletter.
Right.
So I only give them the 2 things to do. I don't give them too many things.
No, it confuses them, like, what?
It does. It confuses me when I get to the end of somebody's book. I'm like, well, what thing do I do? I don't know.
And also sometimes I think they're just going to go in one direction.
Yeah.
So the one direction you want them to go to is to buy the next book or to sign up. So you've got to choose which one. Yeah,
exactly. The other thing I started doing, I didn't do it from the beginning because, we just learn these things as we go. My front newsletter link and my back newsletter link are tagged. I think I use Bitly to do it. They're tagged, so I know I can look if somebody came from the front or the back.
Oh, wow, that's cool.
Very good.
That is good.
And you'd be surprised. You get people who will come from the front. They will go sign up for that newsletter, and then they will read the book. And then you get some who don't show up until they get to the back.
Yeah, that's cool. I'm writing that down immediately.
I'd be curious as to know the mindset around that, right?
Yeah. Like, I mean, I know I've done it. I'm sure I got the idea from somebody. They had that, sign up to get bonus content or whatever. And I'm like, well, let me do that now before I start reading. And so I would do it.
Yeah.
Whereas I feel like I'd want to test and read the book, make sure I like the book.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, that's what I would be like.
But here's the thing. If you're writing in a series and you put that in every series, well, then by the time they've gotten to book 4 or 5 or whatever, they probably know they like you. And so then they'll be like, oh yeah, I keep meaning to do that. And then they go do it.
Oh, true. That's a point.
I think it's just a way to catch more people. You catch them from the front, you catch them from the back,
Yeah.
I mean, everyone's different. That's the point, right? It's not someone who might not sign up from the front, they'll go to the back, and someone might not do it at the end. So you have it at the front.
And then some people don't use either link. They're just going to either not sign up, or they're going to go to your website and sign up or something like that,
Or they
just the way to catch
on your lists.
They're already there.
Yeah.
That's exactly right.
Is there any other kind of marketing things that you can think of in terms of series that you could recommend for people that they need to think about?
Oh my goodness. I think one of the things we do in my newsletter is we will feature a backlist book from time to time. And we've varied the things we've done, but I think we've started doing it by trope. And, my assistant will be like, if you liked, well, I should say, my Shade, the seal, his code name is Shade. Shade will introduce the book and be like, if you like a forced proximity, opposites attract, small town, whatever, then maybe you'll like this book. And so we will feature, we might just have a teaser scene, we might have a chapter. I have actually also shared entire books, chapter by chapter. We did it with my first free in series. And it's just an experiment. Everything's an experiment, right? And we're like, well, let's try it and see. And my assistant was worried my newsletter would be too long. And it was kind of long when you put a whole chapter in there. But then if we didn't put it in for some reason, I would get email. Where's the chapter? And this was a free book they could go download. But they were just enjoying reading it weekly. And so then we took some time off, and I let them vote on what they wanted next. Of course, they wanted book 2. And we started doing book 2, which is still in progress. And there were like 3 or 4 weeks in a row we didn't have a chapter because we had so many other stuff. And I got email, where's the chapter? Yeah. So people, they like it. Some of them, we always include the link at the end of the chapter. If you don't want to wait, you can go buy this book here. And some will go buy it, so you get some sales that way.
Do you give them the previous chapters, or you say these?
I don't. Here's this week's chapter. I've thought about that. I mean, my assistant and I have talked about it, and because if somebody comes in late, then they're not getting, but there's not a good way to do it unless you go back and find every single newsletter and then just keep running links. But she thinks the idea is to get them to sample your writing, and then if they like it, they're going to go get the book. Not to give them a free book, because the one book that was free, they could just go get it, didn't matter. And then the one that's paid, I mean, they'd have to go buy it. But if they're that interested, and they've missed the first 6 chapters or whatever, they could go get it.
But the cool thing is that they're actually reading your newsletter in its entirety, and there's going to be something else in there that they can click on.
Right.
And so, it's just like keeping them there.
And
clicking.
Right. And I mean, I don't know if it's a good idea or not. We've been doing it for a while, and my open rates and click rates they're pretty good, but they're not like, we would all love to have like a 80% open rate and a 60% click rate. And mine is better than the industry average. I think I probably have a 35% open rate or something, and the click rate might be 20% or something, which is really good.
That's good.
So it's not bad, but I sometimes think, oh my gosh, am I sending them too much stuff? This thing is long, but
it's working.
I mean, considering how many people you've got on your list, I think they're great percentages, really.
Cool. So I think, have you guys got any more questions?
No, I think I've asked pretty much everything that was on burning so many on my
notes. Seriously,
I need to go back and re-listen and do my notes.
Thank you for being so generous.
Awesome.
Thank you for having me. And I tell you, I was like, because I listened to the podcast and I'm like, I don't know if I have anything to say they'll want to hear. So
absolutely,
it's been fascinating.
It's been fascinating.
Before we head off, I just want to ask you: is there any last nugget of gold that you want to put out there into the to the audience? Just anything that's helped you in your career, or any piece of advice that you would give someone to help them keep going, I guess? Or
because I wrote for so many years under the model we had before, where if you couldn't get an editor or an agent, you weren't selling a book. I learned persistence, and not to give up. And I think just don't give up. I mean, if you're just starting out, you are not going to write a perfect book, and you're not going to, for the most part, you're not going to publish it and make $1 million overnight. I mean, I'm sure there's always the exception to the rule, but even somebody like Colleen Hoover, who's doing so amazing. I mean, she self-published her first book in 2013. I mean, nothing happens overnight. So just this is a long game. I think that is what I would tell people. This is a long game, and you're never done learning. You're never done growing. You're never finished unless you think you're finished. Don't think you're finished. Learn the next thing. Try the next thing. Just keep trying.
That's great advice.
It's very good advice. Thank you so much for that, and thank you so much for taking the time to be with us here today. So if someone wants to go and check you out, where's the best place to come and find you?
Well, they can find me on my website, www.lynnrayeharris.com, and it's RAYE, Ray with an E, which isn't common, and Lynn without an E, LYNNRAYEHARRIS.com. I don't know. I get lots of spellings of my name, so probably should have spelled it to begin with. Facebook, author Lynn Raye Harris. And I have a Facebook group that is fairly active. And like I said, my husband's in there sharing goofy jokes and being inappropriate from time to time. Not really, truly inappropriate. He checks it out with me if he thinks it's going to be inappropriate. And I'll be like, oh, no, you can't post that. Or, yeah, I love it. So it's Hostile Operations Team, readers and fans. It might even be hot readers and fans. But anyway, if you go to my page, you'll find it. I link everywhere. I link in my newsletter to it. So awesome. Join me on my newsletter and see what Shade is up to this week.
Cannot wait.
I think we might.
Yeah.
He might not be there this week. I don't know. It's all how he feels, but
what he's feeling on the day, eh?
Yeah, exactly.
And where can we be found, Cheryl?
We can be found at spagirlspodcast.com everywhere. And we'd just like to say a big thank you to our Patreon subscribers who keep this podcast going. Don't think it's insignificant to us, because it really, really means a lot that you're helping sponsor the show. So come find us everywhere, and don't forget YouTube too.
Awesome. Thank you. And thank you to all of our listeners for listening to another episode of the Spa Girls podcast. We've loved having you here with us, and we'll be back again next week. But for now, farewell.
Bye.
Bye.